All right, so with me here is Joe Tufaro, Anthony Strait, and Jake Kaplan. This is our NFL edition, the NFL preview of On the Sports Lines. However, I do want to mention, just because it just broke within the last 2 hours, the passing away of a local icon in Davey Johnson. Managed the 1986 New York Mets, highest winning percentage of any Met manager at 588. Four-time All-Star by himself in his playing days, and was basically managing until about 2015 or so. So we have two big time Mets fans here. I'll start with Anthony. Your thoughts on Davey Johnson, who just passed away this morning or in the last 24 hours at the age of 82?
Well, look, I sent you the actual alert, and it's definitely something I wasn't expecting to wake up to this morning. Um, when I think about David Johnson, obviously think about the '86 Mets, and you think about all those personalities that was in that clubhouse. I don't know if you could think of anyone who could have managed that team to that kind of success. I mean, 108 victories, which is the most for about 2 decades almost. But the way that team came together and the personalities and the fact that they pretty much steamrolled their way to a division title. Um, and then obviously the epic LCS series against the Astros and the World Series. But David Johnson took over a team that had won a pennant in a number of years. 1973 was just the last time they had won a pennant when he took over in 1984. And he took over a team that had some white Butter Stars and Down Strawberry, the White Gun, Keith Hernandez and had came over from the Cardinals, Gary Carter from Montreal, respectively. And they looked at some of these hard-nosed players like Lenny Dykstra, Tim Tuffle, and look at the pitching staff he had with Sid Fernandez and Ron Darling and just so many of these players coming together. And then in '88 they won the division title again, and in '87, between '85, '87, they had the battle with St. Louis down the stretch. Um, and just barely missing the playoffs. '88 they got to the Elite Championship Series again. Um, but I do remember, and I was a little younger, I do remember how
You can find
1990
the
he was let
Texas
go
game.
by the Mets
Texas.
early on that season.
Mhm.
Um, and it's kind of a lost chapter, but for us Mets fans, but he did manage the Baltimore Orioles in the mid '90s and got them to a couple of playoff appearances. And his last stint, I think, was with the Nationals about 11 years ago. So he had a chance to manage a very young Bryce Harper towards the end of his career. But I just think that Davey Johnson had just an amazing manager and someone who was able to just be able to mend different personalities and bring them together. I mean, and also he did manage the Dodgers as well. So he's had a number of stops where he's had playing success as a manager and as a player as well. He was a four-time All-Star. So and it just dawned on me that next week, the Mets is hosting the Old Timers Day, and I remember reading a comment on social media that it would be nice to have some kind of video message from David Johnson since he wasn't going to physically be there. And um, I mean, it's a tough blow if you are a baseball fan in general. Just expecting what Johnson brought to the game. And Joe, you're just as much as a Mets fan as I am. I'll bring you in on this, and I'd like to hear your comments and thoughts on David Johnson.
Yeah, well, answer to one of the best trivia questions ever, right? Who made the last out in the 1969 World Series? And it was Davey Johnson, who led the.
No, really? I
Yeah,
did not
yeah,
know that. That's a great trivia question.
yep. Um, yeah, so that's always one of those famous things that you've heard from, Ralph Kiner and those guys when they were doing the games. And yeah, I'm a little bit older than you guys, so I was at most of that stuff. I was at Game 6. Um, you know, Davey Johnson was innovative, which was kind of cool. He was the first one who started doing when he would run out of position players, he would put pitchers in the outfield and then switch guys in to pitch left and right, which you can't do anymore because they changed the rules. But he'd actually put McDowell
Roscoe and
in,
McDowell would do that.
yeah, so that he'd be able to pitch a lefty against a lefty and a righty against a righty without taking anybody out, and he just put him in the outfield. Because again, pitchers were athletes back then, right? They all loved playing the field, and so he could hide them somewhere. And he was the first one to start doing all that stuff, and it was fun. And those teams were fun. Those teams played some wild games. The game in Atlanta and some other things that happened in those days. That Fourth of July game, that July 3rd, fourth game, just wild stuff. And Davey just let them be. We always heard all the stories of the wrecked planes and the buses and who was doing what. And he probably wasn't the best for those young guys because he kind of let them do whatever they wanted to do. He figured the veterans would take care of it. And, Gooden and Strawberry kind of went off on a bad path there for a while, but he was a baseball guy, and that's what he was, and he knew he could get the best out of him. And Keith, I'm sure today will be speaking very poetically about him, about how Davey was a player's manager, and everybody shocked everybody in '86 when he came to training camp and said, "We're going to dominate everybody. We're not just going to win. We're going to dominate everybody." And they all give him credit for that attitude, and he let them have the fights. He let them do the whole bit, and he was part of it. And the famous picture of in 1986 in Game 6 when there's 2 outs and he walks in the dugout and he just sits down next to Mel Stoudemire and kind of just like it's over. And you kind of get, and again, I was at the game, so I didn't see it at the time, but when you watch it back now, it's like, it's the only time you see a manager, a coach actually kind of give up. Like, I can't believe we're going to lose this after all we've done. And I remember looking at my friend Tony and going, I can't believe we're going to watch them lose the World Series after this year. And then Gary Carter gets a hit and Henderson gets a hit, and we all know the story. But Davey was good. Davey was innovative. Like I said, he tried different things. He was like Buck Showalter before Buck Showalter. And again, that's the trivia question is really kind of interesting.
That's very
And,
cool.
so he'll always be remembered fondly. Again, the fact that we haven't won anything since then makes him even more special. The fact that we haven't been back, or well, we were back, but we haven't won one since '86. Davey will always be a special guy.
Yeah. It's a sad day for Mets fans everywhere, no matter the generation. Being from the Bronx, I'm a born and raised Yankee fan, but I had a front row seat to the 1986 Mets that Johnson managed to those 108 wins in the World Series title. And to say that he and the team captured the Big Apple that season would be a colossal understatement. The current generation probably doesn't know that Johnson played 13 seasons in the majors. You guys both said he made 4 All-Star teams. He also won 3 Gold Gloves and helped the Baltimore Orioles win 2 World Series titles. But that's because, the 6+ years he spent managing the Mets is what he's most remembered for, and rightly so. The Amazons won 595 games during his time at the helm. That 1986 team stamped itself into the pages of the history of the game. He finished his 17-season managerial career with a .562 winning percentage, 10th best all-time in baseball history for managers with 1,000 career wins. He's a member of both the Mets and the Orioles Halls of Fame, and he's the only manager with 300 or more wins above 500 not currently inducted in Cooperstown. When I texted the link to the article in The Athletic about Johnson's passing to the OTSL group chat, I knew it would resonate most deeply with our OGs and show founders, Pedro Hazel Jr. and Steve Ferguson. And Pedro's reply says it better than I ever could. And here's what he wrote back. Yeah, that was sad. He was the most successful manager the Mets ever had. If it weren't for Frank Cashen dismantling them immediately after that 1986 championship, they probably would have won at least one more title. Rest in peace, Davey.
Well said, guys. Let's get down to the other business at hand, and that's the NFL season. 2 games down, 270 to go. Still enough to do a preview. My merry band of prognosticators will talk about the season, and procrastinators, since we waited until Saturday to do this. We'll talk about a surprise and disappointment around the NFL. We'll talk about the small trade of a generational player, NBD. Also, of course, 3/4 of us will do predictions. Joe, you don't have to, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. We will first talk about the local teams going into their season opening matchups tomorrow. We're going to ask the guru Joe Tufaro, a current official for high school football, who's already been busy before we even start this show, already
Yeah.
doing
If
some
I fall
games.
asleep during the game, during the thing, just push me over.
I'll make sure I yell it out beforehand. And he will join me every Monday starting this week with our official review podcast, back on every Monday as the season chugs on, the official review podcast on Facebook and TikTok. I'll stop talking. We'll talk about the locals. The New York Giants schedule starts tomorrow when they travel to our nation's capital to play the Commanders. And then the schedule gets no easier in the first month after their meeting with the NFC runners-up. They go to their house of horrors known as Dallas next week. Suspend Dak Prescott for spitting. I'm going to start that right now. And they start their home schedule with the Chiefs and Chargers in week 3 and 4. The Chiefs will be pissed and the Chargers will be really, really good. Now, let's see if the Giants can meet their expectations. Is the floor an expectation? And as we ask Joe 3 burning questions, starting with our own quarterback, game manager Jay Kaplan.
Okay, so we know just how epically bad the Giants offense was last year, even with rookie wide receiver Malik Neighbors putting up a ridiculous Pro Bowl and top 5 offensive rookie of the year season, 109 catches, 1,204 yards, 7 touchdowns, despite the Giants quarterback situation, which was mediocre at best and ultimately led to a brand new quarterback room for this season. Check out some of these team offense numbers and rankings. Points per game, 31st. 16 per game. Points per drive, 31st, 1.45. Red zone touchdown percentage, dead last, 42.3. Score percentage, number of times a drive ended in a score, 31st, 27.9. Offensive success rate, 25th. EPA per play, 29th. EPA per rush, 22. EPA per pass, 31. 31st in yards per play. And that mediocre quarterback play resulted in a passer rating that was 30th in the NFL at 77.8. Joe, with all that as prologue, the performance by what player or position group will most determine if the Giants have a good offense this season?
Well, I think it's pretty cool that we're only last in one category. So if somebody was below us, I'm not sure who that was, but
There was some shitty play last year in the NFL,
say
so
whoever
I
was
don't
number
know how bad
32,
it is.
whoever was number 32 is pretty
And
bad.
31 in some spots too.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I think it's, again, if we're going to talk about a single player having to make an impact on that offense, obviously it's Russell Wilson at this point.
Yeah.
And he has to show that the end of the Pittsburgh thing was an anomaly for whatever was it coaching? Was it scheme? Was it just him not being comfortable being in charge? I don't, the dynamic there better than I do, Jay, but I think it's completely different with a Mike Tomlin versus what they were walking into and the way that he was greeted in New York because again, they needed to upgrade. He was an obvious upgrade. They were willing to take the upgrade of Jameis Winston, and then all of a sudden Russell Wilson kind of came available. And
Yep.
so I think it's him at this point to show that, again, he can play the position professionally. He'll take the yardage that's given to him. He'll take the completions. He's not going to look to be a hero all the time, but he's also going to understand what he's looking at. And that'll be the difference between him and Mr. Jones. And again, he has this ability with guys like Slayton and Hyatt and Neighbors on the roster to be able to throw his patented ball. And again, he's not as mobile as he was in Seattle, but he certainly can avoid a rush. He certainly can move his feet around. He can certainly sprint out still, and then be accurate, which is, the whole thing that was missing with the previous thing. You can be a little bit mobile, but if that takes away from your accuracy, it doesn't do you any good. So I think that on offense, if you're just looking for one key piece to what this is going to go around, and it's no shock, it's going to have to go through the quarterback. We all know it's the offensive line. We all know guys have to be healthy. I think Wan'Dale Robinson is finally back fully healthy, which gives him another option. I think these running backs have great hands, Scatterboo included, and Tyrone Taylor and all these guys. So So I think he has a ton of options out there. He's got, a big tight end in Theo Johnson, plus he's got a couple other guys. So I think this is the reason there's a little bit optimism is you have a professional player at quarterback that is going to understand the game better, work with Dable and Kafka, knowing what he's seeing to be able to translate to them on the sideline. Hey, this is what they're doing, right? This is what I'm seeing. This is what we need to do to beat that. And he'll understand that, be better at making checks at the line, and then, kind of take it from there and see how they come out. As far as the schedule goes, this reminds me of, amazingly, it reminds me of Eli's second year because they had to go play San Diego on a Sunday night, I think it was, or a Monday night. Maybe it was a Sunday night or Monday night. And of course, the Chargers were 0-2 at the time. And there was LaDainian Tomlinson, and Philip Rivers obviously was his second year. And they got smoked because everybody was all over San Diego going, oh, you have the greatest back in history and you don't throw him the ball. You guys aren't doing this. And it was one of the worst games they had played. I was there. And I think, this schedule sets up that way. Like, you're going to lose. Kansas City loses last night, right? They don't look great, but they never do. They always lose the first game. They've lost the first game for years. It's Kansas City because that's just how they play. They're not worried about it. We'll get them later. We'll win our last 10 games or whatever it is. We'll get home field. And so that's the one I'm actually worried about. I'm worried about Kansas City showing up at the Taylor Swift Bowl on a Sunday night with, maybe getting married before the game in the
No,
parking lot.
that's not happening.
That's not happening.
And then,
By the way, Breeze was the quarterback in that game. You're
that's right,
you're
okay.
in the last year of the Breeze era before you moved to New Orleans.
So it was 0 and but again, them showing up 0-2 scares the daylights out of me. I'm not scared of Dallas. I'm not scared of tomorrow, because I think the excitement of playing tomorrow is as a lot of people said last night that I heard, the little tidbits that I've gotten is if this wasn't in Landover, a lot more people would be picking the Giants to show what they can do and be. I think they're more prepared coming out of preseason than they have been in 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aligned with that level of optimism. I do think it's warranted, but I mean, Joe, as you alluded to, I had a front row seat to both current New York quarterbacks as they both spent plenty of time on the field last season in Pittsburgh. With Russell Wilson, there's two things that Giants fans need to keep an eye on this year. The first one is his aversion, and it is blatantly obvious, and every defensive coordinator in the NFL knows it, to throwing the ball over the middle. Yes, Russell has one of the best deep throws in the NFL. He can still do it, and with the guys he has on the perimeter, he has, he's going to have opportunities to get Neighbors those go balls. To Jalen Hyatt may actually be able to finally, be a presence as a wide receiver. Slayton's going to enjoy that as well because we know he was a pretty solid deep threat earlier in his career. But if you look at Russell Wilson's heat map from last year, the Reds are on the outside edges outside of the numbers. Forget about outside the hash marks, outside the numbers. The area inside the numbers is cold as ice. And at some point, and I saw this last year, defensive coordinators would take that away, knowing he just did not want to throw the ball over the middle. And that made the Steelers' passing game more one-dimensional, which ultimately led to problems. The other thing about Wilson, I saw this in an article in The Athletic not long after he joined, the Giants, and I saved it just for this show because I had a feeling Joe was going to go with Wilson. He's the most sacked quarterback since entering the league in 2012. I'm reading directly here. That ranking isn't skewed by his longevity since he's also the most sacked quarterback over the past 4 seasons while playing for 3 different teams. His pressure to sack rate perennially ranks among the highest in the league as he lacks the athleticism he boasted earlier in his career to elude pass rushers. Sacks are drive killers as Wilson's offenses have ranked in the top 10 in 3 and outs in each of the past 4 seasons. 2 things to keep an eye on with Russell Wilson running the Giants offense this season.
And we'll talk about the other guy in just a moment, by the way. All right. Anthony, go ahead.
Okay, well, we all know the Giants' more successful season in their franchise has been involving a strong defense that could get after the quarterback. And coming into the season, they might have one of the deepest defensive lines in football. We consider Brian Burns, Kevon Thibodeau, and getting back a healthy Dexter Lawrence to go with Ricky Abdul Carter. So basically, that's going to be a formidable defensive front. However, I do have some little concerns about the back end of that defense, that is the secondary. And we've seen the guys like Delonte Banks kind of struggle in coverage off and on the last couple of seasons. So my question is just like Jay's, which player or position group is going to be key for the Giants' success, especially on the defensive side this season?
Well, again, defense more than anything is a team game, and you have to be able to, the way you stop the run is setting edges, right? So you have to get those guys to do their job and move everybody back inside. You can't get beat outside. I think what we'll find out tomorrow is now that you'll see it against some live play and some scripting and some play calling will be how fast is this defense? And that's going to be key because in years past, in the last few years, you had Dex inside and you had a couple other guys, Okereke, everything was up the middle. And they used to get beat pretty easily around the edges and they used to get beat pretty easily on some quick outs and things like that. So I think it'll be interesting to see how the defensive speed has improved. I do like the guys they brought in on the back end. I think they're going to make a big difference, Debo and Holland and those guys. So I think that part is shored up. They're talking about playing a little bit of a rotation between Flott and Banks, and I think they're going to figure it out on that end. But it all comes down to those front guys, right? I mean, if you can play the run well enough to force guys into third down, and you throw that package out there with all of them, with Carter, and again, Abdul Carter's being made out to be Lawrence Taylor without ever playing it down. So let's see if the guy can actually play.
Significant down,
He's played like
yes.
4 plays in preseason. So, let's see how well he does. Again, he seems to be physical enough. I do like the defensive back they brought in from Baltimore last week. They said they've been looking at him for a year and a half. They wish he had gotten cut last year. He seems very physical, seems to be willing to go in and make tackles. So I think it's going to be, how much can they control the running game? And Anthony, you brought this up to me in years past. They've been terrible against the run. And if you're going to get to 3rd and 1, those 4 guys might as well just stand on the sideline because it does not going to do you any good. And the thing that made the NASCAR package famous in the last decade was because they were in 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 12s, 3rd and 8s, and you just got after the guys, and nobody can hold those guys one-on-one if that's what it's going to be. I don't know which one you're going to choose to double if you're going to keep 5 in, and then if you start keeping running backs and tight ends in, then you're only covering 2 guys. It makes it so much simpler on the backside. So I think if they can limit the time that the quarterback has so they don't have to cover deep, then that makes a big difference. I've described this to you guys in the past that if you only have to cover the first 5 or 6 yards because the 3-step drop is all that guy's getting, or the quick, the 3-second throw is all that guy has. That's a lot easier to do than having to cover for 6 or 7 seconds. So I think that defense can be special. I think it's a lot faster than what we've seen. Um, but again, it's a team game. One affects the other one as much, but it's going to be stopping the run so that you can play that package and have some fun with it.
One thing that interests me about the type of quarterback that they're going to be playing, like week 1, Jaden Daniels is one of the 2 or 3 best running quarterbacks in the league. Dak is not a running quarterback anymore, as we kind of saw on Thursday night. Then you go back, what Mahomes did last night, and most of his plays was with his feet because of the lack of wide receivers that he had. And then you go right back to a stationary quarterback in week 4 and Herbert, who really his only big run was the one he made to win the game again. So it's going to be very interesting because you're going to have to almost decide when you blitz, when you stay back, and you're really going to need a good secondary at least to start the season because again, it's not just going to be get to the quarterback, get to the quarterback, get to the quarterback. You have to learn how to spy. You have to learn how to kind of get everything set to kind of contain. Like you want Jaden Daniels to kind of be like he was in the game last year against Washington when he was still getting his legs when he was still kind of getting his legs about him. Giants actually did a really good job against Jaden last year. I know we're not playing this for one game, but it's really interesting how it's going to kind of have to be a mix and match between mobile and really stationary quarterbacks to start the season.
Yeah. And I think the speed of Abdul Carter is what they're kind of counting on, that if you put him in as a spy, just to make sure that he's going to be throwing the ball. I think that that's a big difference. And he's done it again. We all know college is different than the pros because, as Eli said last night on Francesa, he goes, those defensive linemen are pretty fast and they do come up behind you sometimes when you're running down the field. He goes, they're very speedy. So again, if Abdul Carter is as advertised, then I think that gives him a little bit of a plus over what they even did last year of containing that and controlling it. But yeah, it's always a cat and mouse game. So you're going to have to do a lot of different things. It'll be interesting. Be fun to watch.
All right, so let's get to the coaching aspect of it, which we're going to talk about for the last question on both of them. Year 4 for Brian Daboll. Every year has been a little bit of a decrease, not necessarily his fault, but 9-7-1 in year 1, 6-11 year 2, 3-14 in year 3. This is at least an opportunity to kind of get a reset with this team in year number 4. However, there were a lot of calls for his head last year with this team. Some, and it wasn't listened to, which is, you don't have to listen to the internet. That's not the rules here. But what will keep his job to make him go into year 5?
Staying alive. These guys are coming back. There's no the influx. So. Yeah, the injection of Jackson Dart has saved their program, has saved their ideas. As bad as things looked because of Saquon and all that stuff, it all goes away at this point because of Jackson Dart, which is amazing. So as long as he stays alive and everything goes well, I think you could see Daboll's renewed. He's finally working with somebody he believes in. It's somebody he drafted that he told Shane he wanted. If you watch the draft room videos, that was it, right? It was his pick. And the fact that he's this, when he first came in, he was supposed to be this quarterback guru, but of course they didn't believe in the one they had. And then as hard as he tried, and it had to get frustrating for him at times, as hard as he tried to be as good a coach as he is, to not have somebody respond to it had to be very difficult. To have somebody who couldn't execute it, somebody who just didn't get it maybe, or whatever the story turned out to be. But you could tell that he was off his game at times because he didn't have who he wanted there. Now that he gets them, and again, they said, they're inseparable at this point. He knows his job is to develop Jackson Dart. Russell Wilson, go play your game, talk to Kafka. I'll coach the team. You guys figure it out. I trust Russell Wilson. I know how good he's been in the past. He's got this attitude of almost like when Belichick with Tom Brady, like, I'm not even looking at the offense. You guys go figure it out. I trust whatever Russell's going to do. And then when you come tap me on the shoulder and go, hey, we need the other guy, he'll be ready. And Eli said it last night. Phil Simms has said it. And it's so funny. Nobody remembers that Eli started in week, whatever it was, 10 or something on his first year against Baltimore of all teams. But that was Tom Coughlin's plan, right? Was, hey, let's let him watch for a while and then we'll put him in. A lot of people say he should sit the whole year, should be like a redshirt year. I think at some point, depending on how Russell's playing, depending on the record, you're going to have to put him in. If they're 2-8, guess who's playing? Like, and nobody's going to have a problem with it. It's going to be just like they did with Kurt Warner. Just go say, hey, the kid's going to play, and we'll trade. You'll be out of your contract at the end of the year, but do whatever you can with him. But Jackson seems to be a very likable guy. Everybody seems to get along with him on the team. I think Russell Wilson likes him and doesn't mind taking that mantle of helping him along and teaching him, knowing that he's the next guy. And he's handled the media well. again, if you guys missed it last night, Eli was on Francesa's podcast, and really interesting stuff for Eli to talk about it because, again, he was in that position and just saying, look how well he's handled New York. Look how well he's handled the media. Look how well he's handled playing in front of the crowd. Look how, he said he's got a little swagger about him, but, he keeps that to a certain way. And he got the media on his side right away. Every question in the preseason was about Jackson Dart. Until they got to this week, nobody even asked about Russell Wilson. Finally, they go, oh, so I guess Russell's the starter, and we're going to go, yeah, he has been all along. But the story in New York is going to be Jackson Dart, Jackson Dart, Jackson Dart. And I just think he'll be able to handle the moment when it finally comes. He likened it to Arch playing last week. Like, you start your college career against the national championships on a champion team on the road. Not an easy spot to go. So let's try to find Jackson a little bit softer starting point at home somewhere and see how he does. And, don't set him up to fail like we did with some other people because you had no choice. It's nice to have the choice to do it this way.
Yeah.
And we said Patrick Mahomes sat for an entire year. Jordan Love sat for 3 years. A lot of guys who weren't, and again, this is the anomaly that I don't like in the conversation sometimes is they go, oh, first round draft pick quarterbacks fail 70% of the time. Yeah. The guys who were forced to be picked number one, the guys like Ryan Leaf, the guys that, there was an argument to pick Peyton Manning or Ryan Leaf. That was the decision that they had to make that year. And it's like, there was no decision after you watched them play, right? But the hype of everything that he did up in Washington State and ESPN and blah, 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 and they forced these GMs and these coaches to make these decisions that the guy shouldn't be picked. He's like the 20th best guy on the draft board, and they're going to make him go number one. And we've seen it over and over and over again that they force this pick, and that's why the guy fails. And then you stick him in right away with a coach that doesn't belong there. Again, when you pick a quarterback number one, chances are you were so bad, you might have a new GM, a new coach, not always the right guy, and not an offensive mind or whatever it is. So it's very difficult, I think, to put all those numbers on him. But the fact that he got picked where he did at 25, they didn't force anything. He's not Shador. He's not, putting that kind of pressure. He's not putting that kind of pressure on the team like, hey, what am I doing here? I should have been number one. So I think it's going to go very well in that case. And I think that's we need any reason for optimism in this town at this point. But I think that that's the reason for the optimism is how well he's done with that.
I mean, Rabbi, I mean, you know this, and Joe as well, because I talk about this on every draft show, about how a quarterback, everybody is in such a rush to draft a quarterback high up in the first round because and championing him before he's even taken a snap in a real game. Why? Because the owners have to win the press conference. They have to keep the fan base, hopeful. And how do you do it? Even though from a purely football decision, it's rarely the right move. The quarterbacks that Joe just named, why did they flourish when they finally got their chance to start? Because they went to a situation where they didn't have to be thrown off the deep end from day one because there was an established starter who gave that team a chance to win ball games. So you didn't have to rush the new kid, into the fire. And we've seen this, the number of busts. I mean, Joe, you threw a couple of names around. Anthony Richardson is at this point, he's the next guy most likely to be added to that list. When you consider that the reason they went with Daniel Jones, because not because of Jones's ceiling, but because of his floor. Because unfortunately, in the NFL is a win now league, and coaches, as much as they want to be able to develop quarterbacks like Dable did with Allen in Buffalo, when you're in a situation where you are coming off multiple losing seasons, your primary goal is not to develop the next franchise quarterback. Your goal is to do whatever you can to win games, to keep your jobs, and that is often at odds with developing that kid.
It's funny how everything is like. By the way, you also have a Jaden Daniels and the Bo Nix who were thrown into the fire last year and did very well.
But
There's
in
no
better
right
situations.
Washington was not a good situation until, except for the fact that Dan Snyder wasn't there anymore. So, and Denver, yeah, but still, that doesn't mean
But
that
they did
whole
hire the
team is
right
gonna
coach
be better.
too.
That's
They
the
did hire
thing.
the
They
right
had
coach,
the
too.
right guy there.
But again,
That goes a long
it's
way.
also it does, but also it also goes with the fact that there's not a lot of good quarterbacks out there because it doesn't necessarily, like, you can have your quarterbacks out there who can be a game manager and stuff like that, but in some cases you need a quarterback to just get you to the next level. So
but I
that's
also
kind of why
think
a
it's
lot of teams get rushed on them.
I also think it's what you use the quarterback for. So
That too.
the best example of the whole thing is Baker Mayfield, who has turned into being a very good quarterback. And the point of that is they used Baker Mayfield as a marketing piece, right? He was on the State Farm commercial the minute he got drafted, and he was had the keys to the Cleveland Stadium, and he was the guy, and they pushed him from day one to be the success that he wasn't with a very bad team. But they didn't care. They were like, hey, we need to sell tickets. We need to sell this. We need to get some people in the building. We need to get the dog pound back. Blah, 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 blah. Same thing with Jared Goff. Goff had to go number one because they needed a quarterback and for the Rams because they were going to have the Super Bowl. They're building a brand new stadium. And he needed a quarterback. And they didn't have one at the time. So they forced him to take him. And again, it hurt
It
his
worked for a
development.
while. It did, but it also worked for a while, though. They got to the Super Bowl.
No, it did work for a while, but again, it hurt him even in the eyes of the fans that they couldn't wait to get rid of him after a couple of years. That they went out and got Stafford, and it worked out good. At least they were smart enough to make a change and make the change that worked. And I agree with you. There's going to be a little. Hey, Daniel Jones won his first game down in Tampa and looked freaking fantastic. So it's going to work for a while until teams finally figure out what you're actually doing and who the guy is. And again, I saw Ryan Leaf's first game against the Giants. They were like laughing at him. I think he had 4 interceptions in that game, 4 or 5 in that game. And they were like, this is the easiest guy to pick off in the entire, like, we just faked him out the entire game. It was a kind of a joke at that point. And again, it's a different game. It's a different thing, but I think it's the teams and what they use the players for. We're not using Jackson Dart as go out and make as many commercials as you can. Don't bother coming to practice. Do whatever you want to do. This is a serious situation that he's in, and Daboll's the perfect guy for him. Think about what he's done. And Rabbi and I talked about this. Look at what they've done. They put him in there for a quick snap on a third down. Like, if in case Russell gets hurt, you have to run in and play. Can you do it? Can you handle it? They turned off his microphone on this when he started the game. Turned it off and he's out there doing this. And they go, what do I do now, right? And he didn't panic. He didn't waste a timeout. He made the 3 plays, actually brought him down the field and would have scored the touchdown if he had slid. He's smart and he gets it, and he's being taught everything as he's going along in little increments. And Daboll is the perfect coach for that. And I think it's going to lead to some success. And again, that's why we're all a little giddy about starting a season again. So, which is nice to see.
I'm going to leave you guys with this and then we can move on. Here's the other thing. And you guys know, I talk about this on the draft show all the time with regards to quarterbacks. Not only are they the right fit for the team, but is the team able to adjust and alter their philosophy, scheme, whatever, to fit what that guy does best, to put him in the best situations to succeed as he's developing. And one of the things that's kind of gone under the radar this preseason is the fact that Daboll and Kafka, and this is not something you usually talk about with a rookie quarterback who's not going to start, is they incorporated certain things from his Ole Miss playbook and made them part of their playbook to make it easier for him to get comfortable in the NFL. What's the best way to do that? Give him plays he already knows how to execute confidently, which also puts him in a better position to succeed. And that's also something a lot of coaches in the NFL won't do. It's my scheme, my scheme, my scheme, even if that quarterback isn't exactly a perfect fit for the scheme, because we know that most quarterbacks coming in the NFL are very much not scheme neutral. Yeah, I mean, and honestly, I hope it doesn't have. I hope the Giants are doing well enough that Jackson Dart doesn't need to start until next year. But yeah, the Giants fans have a lot of reason for hope.
And now it's my script, my script, my script. So we're going to move on. For all the talk about how tough the Giants' schedule was, the Jets ain't got a picnic either. First two games are at home. Tomorrow's reunion with Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. I don't think Woody Johnson's getting a hug. And week 2 at home for Josh Allen and the Bills. Weeks 3 and 4 are in Florida, lucky bastards. And they're on the road versus Tampa Bay and Miami. Maybe not so lucky. Again, is the floor the expectation? Let's talk some questions with Joe, starting with the man who runs the 8-minute offense, Jay Kaplan.
8 minute. Wow. I guess
I'm going to grab some coffee, but I'm listening.
There you go. Okay. So the Jets offense wasn't as bad as their fellow MetLife tenant. They were more middle of the road than bottom of the barrel. But once again, wide receiver Garrett Wilson was the focus, putting up a 101 catch, 1,104 yards, 7 touchdown season, despite a certain other wide receiver often being force-fed the ball by his BFF quarterback. The running game failed to meet expectations for a number of reasons, and counting number aside, said quarterback's play was serviceable at best. And once again, the team is starting over at the game's most important position. Check out these team offense numbers and rankings. Points per game, 25th, 19.9. Points per drive, 19th, 1.92. Red zone touchdown percentage, 21st, 54.5. Drive score percentage, 24th at 31.4%. Offensive success rate, 17th, 42.28. EPA per play, 17. EPA per rush, 24. EPA per pass, 18. Yards per play, 25th at 5.2. And their passer rating was pretty much middle of the pack at 1892. Joe, with all that as prologue, performance by which player or position group will most determine if the Jets have a good offense this season?
It's got to be the quarterback. It's always got to be the quarterback. Yeah, no, I think
especially in this case.
Yeah, it makes sense because, again, I don't think they're set up very well. I don't think that they did get the guy that they really would like to have had. But after watching, and again, I don't put a lot of stock into preseason and stuff, but after watching Justin Fields not be able to do anything and it looking like Aaron Glenn's going, okay, this guy's not very good. So we will run the ball, we will run the ball, we will run the ball. And every now and then we'll surprise everybody with a little dump pass over the middle that hopefully he doesn't throw to the wrong team. And then we'll also have Justin Fields run the ball. So, Rabbi and I always go, the Giants are going to win a lot of 15-13 games. Well, the Jets are going to win a lot of 5-3 games because there's nothing there. And they're going to have to rely on a lot of running game and hopefully, and then they lose their number one lineman this week, which doesn't hurt any. So, it doesn't help any. So I think they're in a little bit of trouble. I think they're probably the fact that Jet fans aren't out there crowing about their new quarterback and how wonderful they're going to be tells you a lot because those guys cheer anything, Jet fans. And you've seen it right with Aaron Rodgers over the last couple of years. You saw it before that with anybody that happened to walk through the door that was any good with quarterbacks, with Zach Wilson, with Sanchez, to Darnold, to all these guys were going to be the top of the food chain, and they all wind up being exactly what we thought they were going to be. So, again, I didn't think that they were going to be that bad because I do love Aaron Glenn. I think he's going to be good for that. I think he's going to put a little bit of his stamp on it, which will be positive. And he may actually outcoach a few guys, which isn't that hard to do since the 4 of us do it every week. We'll outcoach a few coaches in the NFL. But
I can name a lot right now. Just give me a minute.
I think they're gonna, again, the division isn't great anymore. You just have the one
No.
good team in Buffalo, basically. Um, and the other two are, well, one's a disaster and one's an upcoming team that's got to figure it out for themselves in New England. So I think they finished somewhere middle of the pack in their division, but they really have a lot of work to do, and they're going to need to find. I mean, Justin Fields isn't going to be here in 5 years. Let's just put it that. I'll put if Justin Fields still in 5 years, I'm not doing the show anymore. How's that?
Justin Fields is out here in 5 years. I may not be doing the show anymore. Anthony may still be doing the show, but
he's not going to be here. Let's get that, clear out of the way right now. It's funny. It's like, I had a feeling Joe was going to go there as well. I got to tell you, I mean, as much, and Joe, like you, I don't put a lot of stock in what happens in preseason. The schemes are vanilla. Sometimes the practices against other teams are more telling, but there's a number that jumped out at me about Justin Fields in the preseason games that he played. He averaged 3.9 air yards per pass. That should terrify Jet fans all over the place. Now, is it possible that they're just kind of keeping things vanilla for him preseason games because they don't mean anything? But when you consider that Aaron Glenn was kind of asked about the paucity of throws and the type of throws, nothing really downfield by Fields during preseason, he got a little defensive about it. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure some of that was him protecting his player, but it's going to be a question that's not going to go away until Justin Fields proves that he can actually be a legitimate downfield threat as a passer. I went back to our midseason show from last year where I talked about Fields' time as the Steelers. And I'm literally, he had a solid first 6 games for them. Averaged 66%, completed 66% of his passes going 4-2, but he averaged just 184 yards passing per game. His yards per attempt was under 7. He had a 94 passer rating, but again, he was put in a very specific box in terms of the plays and the types of throws that the Steelers were allowing him to make. And the thing that jumped out at me, and this is again the difference between the hope that Giants fans have with Russell Wilson taking over and the concern that Jets fans should have with Justin Fields taking over. Here it is. This is kind of what jumped out at me. Through 6 games with Justin Fields starting, the Steelers had 9 pass plays of 20 plus yards through the first half of the season last year. The first 2 games that Russell Wilson played in when he reclaimed the starter's job, they had 9 in those 2 games alone. So the big concern here with Justin Fields is, he's taking snaps from his college center. He's throwing to his college, receiver, and they already have that built-in chemistry. The question is what we saw in preseason by design or because he's that limited as a passer and they haven't figured out what they're going to do about it? Are they going to utilize his legs in the run game? Yeah, and Aaron Glenn said, he's going to run the ball pretty much the way they did in Detroit, and they have the horses to do it with starting with Braylon Hall and Reese.
Breece Hall, Breece Hall and Braylon Allen.
Right, and Braylon Allen, sorry. I use this, they're basically the same. They're one
exactly.
one A and one B.
They will be
their names.
They will be. They will be this year.
Credit for that. I'm giving them credit for that.
So but the question is their passing? If their passing game is really only going to consist of like quick slants and quick in-breakers to Wilson, and we really don't know who's going to be the number 2 receiver on this team, and wheel routes out of the backfields, bubble screens, wide receiver screens. And they're not going to be a threat downfield. If Justin Fields can't prove to defensive coordinators across the league that he can actually throw the 15-yard out and the deep post, or the occasional go ball to try and take the top off a defense, This Jets offense is going to be very one-dimensional, and like you said, they're going to win games that more resemble baseball scores than football scores if they win it all.
Yeah, and I think, we talk about being conservative or being vanilla in preseason, but you don't always do that with your own team. Like it's not like, and since Justin Fields been around, it's not like, oh yeah, we're waiting to unveil his new arm that he's going to throw it 80 yards down the field.
Nope.
Like when they played the Giants, it was 3rd and 6 and they ran. It was 3rd and 8 and they ran. It was 3rd and 12 and they ran. It was 3rd and 4 and they ran the ball. And you're like, they don't trust this guy to do anything.
Nope.
And it's obvious. And again, you weren't hiding it because your wide receiver wasn't playing, or again you were going to unveil this secret weapon. It's just not. He's just not there for him. And whether it's all the time he spent in Chicago that made him no good, and again, I give how much I respect your team this in the Steelers, Jay.
Mm-hmm.
I give Tomlin a lot more credit for figuring that out early and going to somebody and going, hey, don't let him screw us up. Like, if you can't throw the ball down the field, don't do it. Like, I don't need him turning the ball over. I got a defense that can play defense. And so I think that showed up last year, too, and the fact that you let him walk and you had nobody for a long – I mean, you had no quarterback on that team for a very long time, and you still may not have anybody, but –
Figure that out tomorrow.
the fact that he just, they let him just go like that at his young age says a lot. So,
Well, he was a flyer last year, and I don't think the Steelers had any intention. That was a bridge year, although the bridge year has led to a second bridge year, which may lead to a third bridge year. So we'll see what happens in tomorrow's Steelers-Jets game, whatever the over-under is.
There's plenty of bridges in the city of Pittsburgh, so kind of go.
Yeah. By the way, whatever the over-under is, take the under in that Steelers-Jets game tomorrow.
Oh yeah,
Anthony, I trust you to ask the next question, so let it rip.
Oh, thanks. Well, it doesn't seem like the last 4 or 5 years the Jets defense is going to be forced in a situation where they have to carry this entire organization.
Yep.
Because we just talked about Justin Fields and how bad this Jets offense could be on a given week, depending on the opponent. Yeah, this defense got its work cut out yet again. But last year, they were number 3. They were the top 5, number 3 in total yards allowed, number 4 against the pass. But, however, they were in the middle of the pack in a lot of other categories. 17th against in stopping the run, 15th in opponents' points per game. Particularly, they didn't force a lot of turnovers, and that was one of the key issues. And new defensive coordinator Steve Wilson is going to be taking over a team that's been good, that was good in some categories, and not so good in others. And obviously the question is the same with Jay from the defensive side. Which position player or position group is going to be key for a Jets defense that's going to have to carry the load, particularly? And I don't know if you are thinking the same way. There's one defensive back that we talked about on this show quite a bit that you said plenty of times, don't put this kid in the can just yet, that has regressed since his rookie season. And then, Joe, I'll let you take the floor because I see you nodding your head. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about here.
We all know who you're talking about.
Froze up on me.
Joe, you there?
Yeah, I think.
Can you hear me?
Joe, you there?
Yeah.
there
he is.
There he is.
You're back.
All right.
I got the question. So I think that with the Jet, I was going to say defense wins championships, but not in this case. Because I don't think you can stay on the field for 40 minutes a week, 18 weeks in a row.
No.
And again, if they're going to choose to play as conservative as they have on offense, it's only going to work against certain teams. And again, they're going to load up the box and they're going to force this offense to make some plays. And I don't think they have enough plays in them. So seriously, they're going to be on the field a ton. And again, as good as Sauce Gardner was when he first came out, again, I think he's better in his head than he is on the field at this point. And probably a guy that you should maybe even trade in the middle of the year like you did at Jamal Adams and just get something for him at this point, because you're going to need more players. You're going to need more people coming in. You're going to need to be able to move up maybe to get a quarterback. You're going to have to do a lot of different things that if you're a little bit of a mediocre team, Jay knows my famous saying, like, you win 7 games in the NFL or 6 games in the NFL, it's like winning 30 games in the NBA. You're going to get the number 15 draft pick, and nobody knows who he is. And he's some guy, some point guard from Spain. He's not winning you a championship. So where do you go from here? The same thing with Jay with the Steelers. It's like, okay, you get Aaron Rodgers for a year if he stays healthy, maybe 2. Where are you going after this? You're doing it to win 7 or 8, 9 games. But again, that only gets you a number 20 draft pick. You're not finding a quarterback, a top flight guy maybe at that point. So again, with the Jets, I like the change in attitude. I like the structural change. I think he's a guy that he probably scares Woody a little bit. He can put Woody in his place a little bit. He's not walking in and firing him after week 4.
No.
I don't think he'll be able to get in his door and to talk to him. So I think I think the head coach is the perfect guy for this. But that defense is going to get abused this year, just because they're going to be on the field so much. There's no way they're stopping Josh Allen in the fourth quarter after being on the field for 30 minutes. It's just not going to happen. And if you have no answer on offense that we can put up, again, the NFL has turned into, if you can't put 25 points up on the board, you're probably not going to win. You don't win a lot of 17, 14 games anymore in the NFL. All they did is pick on the Giants for not being able to put 30 up for the last 5 years. And I don't see the Jets coming anywhere close to putting that number of points up. So you'll win a few games. They'll be spectacular for a few first quarters and maybe get them a couple of turnovers, but they're going to be out there forever. I guarantee you, the end of the season, we go back and look at those stats, they'll be on the field longer than most defenses. I won't say all, because there are some pretty bad teams, but
Yeah.
than most defenses.
Yeah. And by the way, getting back on Gardner, if you want to see how his numbers have slipped the last few years, 5.3 yards per target was his rookie season. He was a Pro Bowler. Year 2, 6.0. Last year, it ballooned to 9.3 yards per target. And between penalties, missed tackles, lack of playmaking, and on top of that, this week complaining about not being named one of the team captains. You're being paid as a cornerstone for this defense, and you're not acting like one. There's some questions that you're gonna have to start asking sooner or later if his play doesn't measure up to the contract that just gave him a year and a half ago.
No, over the offseason. Over the
offseason, 4-year, $120 million, $85 million guaranteed. He's gonna have to play up to. Going to have to raise his play quite a bit. Never before he even thinks about being a captain on the team. He needs to live up to the production the Jets are actually paying him for.
So I never used to put a lot of credit into these guys, but I think they've done a better job over the last 5 years or so. Somebody look up his PFF rating for the last 5 years, and I guarantee you it's brutal.
I will do that in just a second, but first, I want to mention about the.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I mean, Anthony talked about once that, and I had to look this up because, to me, this is a more telling stat when you're talking about a guy who came into the league and everybody's like he's going to be the next great, number 1 cornerback, shutdown cornerback. Yards per completion against him. Rookie season 9.8. Second season 10.7. Last year, yards per completion against 16.4. Mm-hmm. That's not going to get it done by a guy who's supposed to be your shutdown corner.
And he's starting to get a lot more penalties called against him because, again, when he first came in, everybody didn't do it, right? He was the next Darrelle Revis, and Revis held more than anybody, but they didn't call it on him. And now all of a sudden you start not being as good as you were, and you start not tackling, and you start doing stuff. You start getting more penalties called against you. It's just the fact of life, and he's gotten a ton called against him lately. I think last year was probably one of his highest, if not 2 years ago. So I think, again, it's kind of changed, and he has to get the conversation back in his favor. But I think that'll be up to him to do, and we'll see what happens. So.
Yeah, he was on the NFL Network's top 100 players.
Yeah.
This year, I know it's a list that's kind of biased, but
It's
he's
voted
like
on by the players, so
yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's
there's
exactly.
some
actually
bias to
something.
it by far.
Yeah, and they
But
all work
this
for
year,
the same agent, and they all
yeah,
have this. Yeah,
yeah,
it's all a bunch of crap.
I know, but it is saying that he's on a list 2 years in a row, and this year doesn't even crack the top 100. I think that
Yeah.
says quite a bit.
To be fair, since I did it, he is PFF's number one corner for
Mhm.
2025 over the reigning player, defensive player of the year, Patrick Surtain. So make that what you will. It's just it's numbers, but we'll see what happens. Again, there are a lot of other quarters that I will not take over Sauce Gardner. It's a good situation to have, but it is a high standard. Speaking of a high standard, everybody is talking about the Lions, how they're going to be without their two top coaches, Ben Johnson obviously going to Chicago, Aaron Glenn going to New York. But what I want to ask is, what's the expectation to be a success in Aaron Glenn's first season, bringing over the quarterback coach, by the way, as now the offensive coordinator in New York? What is Aaron Glenn's high expectation this year, and what's going to make him a success in year one?
Well, again, just he's he's in a rough spot because he's trying to redo it. He's trying to remake a team that you can't just kind of rip it all apart and start from scratch because of where you are. You're in New York. You got an owner that wants to be successful at any cost. Um,
Who's
wants to
old
be able
too,
to,
who's old too, by the way.
yeah,
So
but
he doesn't want
but
he wants to be the one that's there for the success, even if it's not just the family.
exactly. And he wants to go out to his parties in the Hamptons and have everybody slapping him on the back, not be telling him to go fire his coach. And we all know that's how Saleh got fired. Saleh was not a good coach, but Saleh got fired because when they went to England and on his private plane back, every one of his buddies were saying, it's the coach, you got to get rid of him, you got to fire him. And he walks in and fires him on Tuesday without talking to the GM, which just cut the whole team into shreds. So the team is a disaster, but it's not a record disaster. They didn't win one game. So to go in there and tear it all down, he's got some good players, and it's a different NFL, right? You can't just get rid of everybody and start from scratch. It's not college. Can't go out and buy a bunch of players. Um, but I think he can change the attitude of the team. He can change the way it's run inside the building, which I think is things that we won't see, but all of a sudden you'll see that they'll be a little bit better at some things. And I think it'll be good in the long run for the team to have him there, whether he leaves in a couple of years or not to go somewhere else to get a better job. But he's going to have to find, again, I don't know how you find quarterbacks now when you still have to try to be successful going on. Like I said, if they win one game, it's the luckiest thing that ever happened to them, and they go out and hopefully they pick the right quarterback. But if they somehow win 5 or 6 games and they're drafted 11th, I don't think it gets any better too soon unless there's a free agent out there that's like a
Or
Baker Mayfield, right? That's going to be able to walk in and actually play.
or they got to move, or they got to move themselves up in the draft, which is what
Right,
they've
and
been
then
doing
you're
pretty
gonna have
much to get their
but that's what I'm saying.
quarterbacks.
Maybe you do trade somebody that you think's untouchable to get a bunch of draft picks and see what you can put a package together for somebody. Otherwise, you're gonna have Justin Fields, you're gonna have Russell Wilson next year playing for you because we don't need him anymore. Or you're gonna have Jameis Winston playing for you, or you're gonna have Justin Fields playing for you for a couple of years. It's just not gonna work. His system is gonna be tough. It's gonna be hard nosed. It's gonna be um, not a lot of excitement to watch, and that's fine by him. And he'll be the tough guy, and he'll be tough with the media, which I think he's kind of taken to almost a Belichick level, which is not good in New York. If you're not good, if you're not winning,
If you're
it
not
won't,
good, yeah.
if you're not good and you're not, and it won't be a lot of fun if you have to go up there every day and say, I'm not talking about it, and you're 0-6. So um,
Yeah.
we'll see where it takes us.
I think
I'm not
one
worried.
of the things that
I'm not concerned.
I think one of the things that gives Aaron Glenn a bit of a leash longer than maybe some of the more recent head coaches of the Woody Johnson era is that Glenn is very much a beloved former player. He knows what it means to play and be in the fishbowl that is, this area playing for this football team. So I think that I'm not saying the fan base is necessarily going to be less hard on him if the Jets are bad. I'm just saying he may get a slightly bit more higher percentage in terms of benefit of the doubt and length of leash because of his history here as a player.
And also, Jay, because the owner is so, it's almost a Dolan situation at this point, is the fans will blame him first. Like that, the order
Right.
of blame is
Johnson
going
will
to go
get
to the
more of the
owner
blame than
first,
Aaron Glenn will.
and then they'll go to Aaron. So I agree with you. He gets the longer leash, but only because they hate the owner so much at this point that's the, it's the James Dolan, Daniel Snyder. He's the problem. It's not these other guys, even though they keep changing. It's the guy at the top. So I think the hatred goes there first.
Oh yeah,
And that gives him a little bit extra room.
And to Woody's credit, he hasn't been as visible during training camp and preseason as he's been the last 2 years. So maybe that is also him recognizing that maybe he finally has the right guy as the head coach to let him be the front-facing guy.
And the right guy who's not quarterback, by the way, as well.
Well,
I think he's actually
addition by
scared.
subtraction.
I don't think he has enough nerve to walk up to Aaron Glenn and say anything at this moment.
No.
So I think he's staying back because Aaron just gives him one look and he walks the other direction and says, "Okay, you guys handle it." No,
go back to your golf club. I got this. That's what you brought me here for. I got this.
Right.
Go away.
So I don't think we got to worry about that.
But again, a respected player is going to get a lot more clout than somebody who wasn't a player. So that's going to help out a bunch. All right. Moving on, trigger warning here. You're going to get a lot of numbers in this next lead up, so be prepared. Since 2002, just over 44% of division winners won their division again the following season, a figure that has risen slightly to 47.5% over the last 10 years. Also, since 2002, just over 60% of teams that won their divisions made it back to the postseason the following season, either by winning their division again or finishing as the 5, 6, or now 7 seed in their conference. But with all that being said, only 4 new teams from 2023 made the 14-team NFL playoffs in 2024. And sorry, if you want to play any of those numbers in tonight's Powerball drawing, that's mine. I've already done it. Too bad. Jay, let's move on. So this is going to be an expectations type of segment. I'll lead you in and I'll let you know all of them. So Jay, you're up first. An AFC team that will exceed the expectations that's been given to them in the preseason.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go with the New England Patriots, and I read a lot ever since Mike Vrabel, got hired as head coach, and we talked plenty about the Patriots last year, the epic disaster that they've been over the last 2 years. So I kind of wanted to do a really deep dive into how things have changed and what people can keep an eye on for this season. So I mean. The the woeful last few years of the post-Tom Brady, Bill Belichick era, and we all know that Gerard Mayo was way in over his head last season as the Hoodie's successor, and you've had back-to-back 4-13 seasons. So the bar was pretty low here. But hiring Mike Vrabel, who spent 14 years as an NFL linebacker, most of them with the Patriots, is a Patriots Hall of Famer and picked up a whistle right after his playing career ended in 2011. Hiring him as a head coach instantly brought a difference to the organization. There's a sense of hope. There's a whole new attitude permeating the locker room. All through training camp, Vrabel was very hands-on with just about everything in practice. He'd work the blocking pads during O-line blocking drills. He'd step in and play safety during periods where the first team offense was running plays against the scout team defense. And he would step in, as part of the punt rush during special teams periods. The players who'd been in the league a while had heard the stories about just how hands-on Vrabel could be. But seeing it live was a whole new experience for them. He comes across as authentic and direct. Tony Dews, who's the Patriots running back coach and a longtime Vrabel assistant back from their days in Tennessee, put it best saying, quote, "The best thing about Vrabel is you don't ever have to wonder where you stand with him. When he's not happy with you, you'll know," which is a stark departure from how Belichick did things. As was Vrabel having offensive players talk to defensive coaches and vice versa, along with the pop quizzes he would throw out during team meetings. Sometimes they were situational football related. Other times it was non-football related. These types of exercises and meetings are more about accountability than intimidation. He wants each player to be able to stand up in front of his teammates and prove he knows what he must do to help the team. And all this stuff goes a long way to changing a culture and an attitude that was beyond toxic over the last couple of years. Now, look, Vrabel has a tough road ahead of him this season. The roster he inherited might have been the worst in the NFL. And even after overhauling it, Patriots have 28 new players on their 53-man roster, the most in the NFL, along with 12 rookies, also the most in the league, and 14 new starters. This team will not be mistaken for a playoff contender, as most of the talent is serviceable at best. This is a team that was in the bottom of the barrel on both sides of the ball and a lot of key stats and metric. 19th in offensive success rate, 27th in EPA per play, 29th in EPA per pass, 25th in EPA per run, 30th in points per game, 30th in points per drive, 30th in red zone touchdown percentage. On the defensive side of the ball, 27th in success rate, 29th in EPA per play, 30th in EPA per pass play, 19th in EPA per run play, 22nd in points allowed, 26th in points allowed per drive, 25th in red zone touchdown percentage allowed. But with their schedule being the third easiest in the NFL, their opponents have a 429% winning percentage from last year, and they only play 5 games against teams that made the playoffs last season, and 2 of those are against Buffalo. And with that and some incremental improvements on both sides of the ball, they have a chance to be closer to a 500 team than the one that's 8-27 over their last 35 games, hasn't scored 30 points in a game in almost 3 years, and hasn't had a winning record since 2021. Look, those expectations hinge more than just a little on quarterback Drake May taking the often talked about year 2 leap in a new offense with a new OC and play caller in longtime Belichick OC Josh McDaniels, who's back in the NFL after a year off. Now, overall, despite running an offense mostly bereft of playmakers, May put up a Pro Bowl caliber rookie season, completed 66.6% of his passes, 2,276 yards, 6.7 an attempt, with 15 TDs against 10 picks, and an 88.1 passer rating in the 13 games he played after taking over as the starter in Week 6. Look, he has all the physical traits you look for in a franchise quarterback, and we talked about this on the draft show when he came out. Arm strength, mobility, toughness. Though sometimes last season, those traits resulted in him trying to do too much, forcing plays that weren't there, resulting in the 5th highest percentage of turnover-worthy passes per Pro Football Focus. But what gives Vrabel and McDaniels hope for that second-year leap is the way that May has picked up McDaniels' offensive system, which is not known for being simple by any stretch of the imagination. Brady just made it look that way all those years, especially with this group of improved but still not great group of skill position players. He's also had a more focal form of leadership. He's also shown some progress in his decision-making, knowing when to give up on a play so as to not make things worse, as well as remaining a passer even when he scrambles out of the pocket, aka keeping his eyes downfield, which is a key development for a young quarterback. Having veteran receivers like Stephon Diggs and Mac Hollins to throw to, along with promising third-round pick Kyle Williams, should help with that. The other thing that will help, should be an improved running game. The offensive line, which has had issues in the passing game with protecting May and will likely start rookie first-rounder Will Campbell at left tackle, along with 4 new starters total, does do a solid job of opening holes for running backs like rookie Travion Henderson out of Ohio State, whose speed gives the Pats potential for a home run plays every time he touches the ball. They also have plenty of solid depth in that running back room with veterans Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson, who combined for over 1,300 yards rushing last season. Vrabel values a balanced offensive attack, so if the Pats struggle at keeping May upright, and they'll get challenged right out of the gate facing the Raiders and Max Crosby, it won't be a surprise if they lean heavily on that ground game, coupled with an increase in the quick passing game. New England starters are solid, but there isn't a lot of depth quality as you go down that depth chart. Another thing you can point a finger at Belichick for, based on how he handled the draft during the post-Brady years, aside from Drake May. So keeping their ones on both sides of the ball healthy will be a huge key for them this season. Another key will be some of the younger players on defense stepping up. Can the combination of Harold Landry, Caleb Von Chiasson, and Keon White put consistent pressure on opposing quarterbacks from the edge? Can interior defensive lineman Milton Williams and Christian Barmore keep offensive linemen off of linebacker Robert Spillane so he can rack up a third straight 150 tackle season in his first year in New England? And will rookie fourth-round safety Craig Woodson go from being a day 3 draft pick to the instant impact player the Patriots secondary needs? The big thing that Vrabel has focused on is avoiding the dumb mistakes that have cost this team games over the past few years. During team meetings, he talks about putting plays into one of 3 buckets: the good, the bad, and the shit that gets you beat. If they can increase the first, decrease the second, and mostly avoid the third, a 7-10 type season is within their reach, and that would give their fan base something that's been in short supply since Tom Brady left: hope.
May, by the way, was not Belichick's pick. He was already gone at that point. So do not give Belichick any credit, because no one's been giving him credit this week, which is ironic.
Fair enough.
The
one less thing we can not give Bill Belichick credit for.
So interestingly enough, I looked. 4th place schedules is huge. You mentioned they only play 5 teams. 2 teams with 4th place schedules last year in Washington and the LA Chargers. Both made the playoffs last year, and Carolina and Arizona with 4th place schedules showed significant improvements from the previous year. So
I mean, if they win 7 games this year, Rabbi, that's more wins than they've had in the last 2 years combined. So that, in my
it'll be exactly. But yeah, I feel like though that this team is actually higher expectations in my mind. I've seen someone put them but that 7 spot. So we'll see what happens. It's still a lot of stuff to do. Anthony, be negative for me. Give me the team who will not meet their 2025 expectations. I helped you out a little bit in this one. I'm glad I did not say the Chargers after that.
No. You know what? Because
that one wouldn't have aged well after yesterday.
No. Yeah. By the way, it's so off topic, but I have the rugby match in the background. And I gotta be honest, I think NFL teams start watching rugby matches to get a textbook education on goal line stands, because this is interesting. But anyway.
The Eagles use rugby all the time for their tush push. So
the tush push does not count. Okay.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Hey, they're even going to find a sponsor for that play, guys. So it's not going anywhere.
do wipes on line 1. That's all I gotta say.
There you go.
All right. My team, and thank you, Rabbi, for helping me out with this one, because I was kind of I came out of 3 teams, and I had settled on the Denver Broncos, and this is the reason why. They managed to make the playoffs at 10-7, despite having $89 million in dead money on the salary cap last season, thanks to them releasing Russell Wilson prior to last season. And on top of that, the Broncos made the playoffs in spite of themselves, going 1-6 in one-score games. A defense that was unbelievable through most of the season, but clearly showed some flaws towards the end. And by the way, they only won 2 games against winning teams that were playoffs last season. One of them was the Kansas City Chiefs, who pretty much rested everyone in that last game. Yeah, 38. You don't beat Patrick Mahomes 38-0 if he literally stays on the sideline in street clothes, which is exactly what happened. But yeah, part of the concerns with the Broncos, and they do have incredibly lofty expectations. Some prognosticators are actually picking them to challenge for the AFC West title, which is kind of a high bar when you have the Chiefs and Chargers we saw just last night in the same division. But part of the concerns I have is the offensive line might have a step back. Left guard Ben Powers and Luke Wattenberg, the center, didn't look that great in the preseason, and the Broncos have already had their issues with the running game, and if they can't move anybody off the blocks or move them forward, that's going to have a very hard time. So that's been kind of the 2 big concerns along the offensive line. You also wonder if the pass rush can even replicate what they were able to do last season. They led the NFL in sacks with 63, and what reason why it has happened, it's very hard to keep that kind of production up from one year to the next. Part of the reason they were able to do that was being able to get negative plays and forcing, and we talked about this with the Giants defense, being able to force teams to have to play against the 6 and be 3rd and long and 3rd and 5 and more, if they're able to replicate that and being able to still get those negative plays to be able to unleash that pass rush. And another concern is, and it kind of corresponds with Bo Nix, is just how productive can I get this running game going. And I had a flashback last season. I went to that monsoon of a regular season game when it was at MetLife Stadium playing the Jets, and there was at one point I think Bo Nix passing yards matched Tiger Woods' last score in his last golf tournament. It was
That
that
was their
bad.
one, by the way, that was their one score win last year, a
Yeah,
10-9 game.
it was all
Wow.
look, that was a
Nice,
football
man.
that was a football game that set offenses back about 50 years for so many reasons outside of the rain. But it was the defense that carried the game for the Broncos that afternoon, particularly how they confused Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Rodgers could not figure out exactly where the blitzer was coming. I'm sitting in section 115 and I can see what was going on. But obviously Aaron Rodgers could not do it on the center. But the running game was virtually non-existent in that game pretty much all season. And you look at the backfield of RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins, and that's going to be the stable going forward. Can they get this running game somewhat manageable enough to where Bo Nix can improve upon his rookie season? And speaking of Bo Nix, I would say if you want to judge how good a young player is going to be, don't look at his rookie season. Look at his sophomore year when teams have an entire off season and enough game film to piece together to figure out his weaknesses. And part of it was he just didn't go downfield enough. And I don't know if it had to do with the fact that there wasn't much of a running game. And you think about the playoff game against Buffalo, where they actually had a 7-3 lead going into the second quarter before they just got smoked the rest of the way. They didn't take a lot of shots downfield. And Bo Nix is going to have to open up, and they're going to and Sean Payton's going to have to open up this playbook. And I'm not sure if Bo Nix is capable enough to take on more of a responsible role in year two than he had in year one. Look, he had pretty good numbers, but I'm trying not to buy into the numbers as so much as what I saw in the eye test. And the eye test I saw maybe cringe a little bit. Look, the schedule is middle of the pack, which you generally see with a third place team, 15th overall in the league. They should be able to get to a somewhat solid start, but that middle schedule does get a little tricky. You do have to play the Chargers, the Bengals, who I think will be a playoff team, be a lot better than last season. And then you have the Eagles. It's kind of like a 3-week stretch. That's going to be pretty interesting. And then the back half of that schedule, you do have the Packers. You're gonna have the Chiefs and the Chargers to round out the year. This is a team that could go from 10-7 to maybe 8-9 or 7-10 almost immediately if things don't break the way they did last season. I mean, like I said, when you have a team that leads the league in sacks and gets 63, you should be good and be able to ride your defense. It's just a matter of if that defense is on the field a long time, and then something we talk about the Jets, if they're going to be on the field for 35, 40 minutes a game because Bo Nix is suddenly taking a step back, this is a Broncos team that, could really fail living up to even moderate expectations, let alone the lofty ones that we're seeing out of some media heads and on TV and even in print media these days. So I don't see it would take a heck of a lot for the Broncos to even get back to 10-7, let alone 11 a team that would be 11-6 or 12-5. I just think this is a team that, you know what, if they even can fight to make the wild card again in year two, it'd be a step in the right direction. I don't see them being a team that's going to threaten the Chargers or the Chiefs in the division, or be a major player down the stretch in the far as the AFC playoff race is concerned.
Yeah, I
Especially
mean,
after that. Go
yes.
ahead.
Go ahead, Rabbi. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's fab. Just want to move on since we're kind of running a little bit shorter on this show. Especially after last night, I think that AFC West is the best division in football, and don't think that the Raiders. Jay, you can chime in here very, very quick second before we move on. I think the Raiders are going to be a much better team as usual. And again, the Broncos had that fourth place schedule last year, which was a big help.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, like I said, you have to beat playoff teams, and the Broncos just weren't really at that spot last year.
No, I mean, the key with the Broncos this year, and Anthony, you're right, to a certain extent, it is going to hinge on Bo Nix, just like we talked about with Drake May, taking that second year leap. The big thing for him this year will be how he handles pressure on dropbacks, closer to the bottom of the league in a lot of, EPA metrics with regards to that. Sean Payton has said from jump that this is the quarterback he wanted. This is the guy he thinks best fits his system. So he's another one that, are we going to see that leap where he recognizes the mistakes he made during pressure situation when he was under pressure last year? Does he recognize that? And now that he's got that book, will he make better decisions and improve his skills and his numbers when under pressure? That's going to be a big key to in terms of his development, and also whether or not the Broncos can challenge Kansas City for supremacy in that division. And honestly, Rabbi, I agree with you. I don't think they have enough to do so. To me, the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Broncos are all here, and they're going to be cannibalizing each other and kind of flip-flopping. I still think Kansas City, there's a gap between Kansas City and the remaining three teams in that division.
After last night, I'm not 100% sure about that, but we'll see as we go along here. Joe, you and me had the NFC, and for once, I'm making you the optimist. Give me the team who's going to exceed their expectations this year.
Yeah, that's a strange juxtaposition. And I'll get us right back on schedule because you know me. I don't have anything scripted. I think Tampa Bay. I don't know. Again, I don't know what expectations are for different teams and all this stuff, but I think they are a veteran team that's ready to do whatever they can do because it's almost kind of their last hurrah. So Mike Evans, if he's back and he's healthy, Chris Godwin, if he's back and he's healthy, seems to be what derails them every year is one of those guys gets hurt or a couple other guys get hurt and they kind of fall off. But I think Baker has showed that he's really turned into the guy he should have been when he first came out, as we talked about before. I think they have a very strong defense. They got a lot of guys that came back. Levante David's playing at a very high level. I think that, and I have an easy division to play in. Atlanta's probably their only competition there, and we all know that they don't always live up to their expectations either.
And they'll play them week 1 too, so it's definitely they'll know where they stand right out the gate.
Yeah, you'll figure it out pretty quick, right? If Michael Penix the real thing, or are they going to be able to figure out how to use that big tight end finally that they got in the draft? So I think Tampa is going to just grow in confidence as the year goes because of the weak division and maybe a little bit simpler schedule, and then you take it from there. But Baker's never been my favorite person in the world, and John Gruden actually has never been either. But he said he thinks they're going to go all the way to the Super Bowl this year in Tampa, and we think that. I think he thinks that just because
he coached there.
Yeah, because he coached. I think Detroit has lost 2 coordinators, and so we're going to have to figure that out a little bit, right? Is that still going to be that wild, wide open, anything can happen at any time offense, or is it going to change? All of a sudden, you throw Micah Parsons onto a team that has an offense, and it looks good, right? And so now that division is going to just beat the heck out of each other like they should. Does Ben Johnson take Caleb Williams to the next level if there is a next level for Caleb Williams? We'll find all that stuff out pretty quickly, and I think most of the teams are playing opening division games this year, which is good and bad. Sort of like Texas playing OSU in the first game didn't make much sense. They're beating the crap out of San Jose State, which is exactly how they should start a football season. But anyway, I think that Tampa has a chance to get a little bit easier path to at least get to the playoffs, maybe even get a home game. And then you see where, and again, the playoffs are then a crapshoot from there. But I think we all think that the AFC is much stronger than the NFC, and therefore they may have a little bit easier path. And when, it was Washington that got to the NFC Championship game, and then you have, Detroit and San Francisco doesn't look very good. I think there's a little bit more mediocrity in the NFC that gives Tampa that chance. And so I think they might surprise some people. But again, I don't know. I haven't, me, I don't listen to all the baloney in the offseason. So I don't believe in strength of schedule when you don't even know who's the starting quarterbacks. That comes out in the beginning of the year before the draft and before free agency. They tell you strength of schedule. It makes no sense. So we'll see how things change. We'll see what's progressed. But I think they have a path that makes sense to at least get them there and then see what they can do with it.
Two things for me for Tampa Bay, and I agree with you, Joe. I think they're in a pretty good position. The first is how long until they get Tristan Wirth back at left tackle, all pro protecting Baker's blind side. They're going to start the season without him. They're going to be without, as you said, without Chris Godwin. How soon is he back? How soon is McMillan back? Those are Jalen McMillan, two of his, top targets. Yeah, you bring in, Abiko and Bucky Irving, nice draft guys. Here's the thing with Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield is on his third offensive coordinator in his 3 years there. Josh Grizzard is taking over for Liam Cohen, who took the Jaguars head coaching job. Grizzard's never been a play caller. So it's going to be interesting to see how that offense start slower than it has the last couple of years while these two guys find their rhythm and their chemistry, and Grizzard finds his way as a play caller. So that's going to be worth watching, especially out of the gate when they're playing shorthanded, to try and have find that rhythm and find that place while you're missing some of your key players at the start of the season. Not two things you want to have going on simultaneously coming out of the gate.
All right. So the team that I think is going to not meet expectations is a team that Joe's very familiar with, the Rams. I looked at it and I'm very interested to see. First of all, I think the division is interesting just based on the fact that Arizona has questions for me because I don't know what Kyler Murray is so many years into his career. I don't know what Seattle's going to do with Sam Darnold at quarterback. I really like them, but I don't necessarily know what to expect, especially with now no DK Metcalf and no real big wide receiver to throw to. I don't know what to expect from San Francisco just based on the fact that Christian McCaffrey, you find about 10,000 reports about his health every single week. The fact that there are no wide receivers on that team currently right now, except Ricky Pearsall, really, and Jawan Jennings, who just came back after a holdout as their number one as of right now. We'll see what happens with Brandon Ayuk in terms of when he gets back from his injury. I don't know what to expect. With the Rams, the biggest question is the quarterback itself. Matthew Stafford, who was rumored to possibly be going to a bunch of places in the offseason, did end up re-signing with LA, got a contract extension, and he has an aggravated disc in his back. He missed 3 full weeks of training camp. He hasn't taken a hit this preseason. We don't necessarily know what to expect. He's going to play one of the best defenses in the NFL tomorrow in Houston in week number 1. There's just a lot of questions out there. Sure, he has probably one of the best 1-2 combinations in all of football in Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, who is going to play for the first time in God knows how long, a full season without Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, or the threat of Aaron Rodgers possibly being his quarterback. So he's going to have to relate to Stafford, and he might not be the top option, which is good and bad for this team because I don't know how many balls are going to be thrown. And again, if Stafford gets injured, sure, Jimmy Garoppolo is always a good investment as the backup, but this team has a horrible record without Stafford at quarterback. Mind you, the quarterback position is one of their worst spots there. You have Akela Witherspoon and Darius Williams, both are over 30. Both are not great. Witherspoon did not practice this past Thursday. Williams missed 4 games last year himself. Their reserve has also had hamstring injuries. Their pass rush is pretty good, but it's their biggest weakness, though, just because of the fact that they do have Poona Ford and Nate Landon coming back. But if you saw the 2 games that they played against Saquon Barkley last year, they got gashed. They got gashed to no end, and I think any running back can gash them right now. The Rams have exceeded expectations their last 2 years, making the playoffs in 23 and 24, and you can never count any Sean McVay team out. However, I do think that the fact that there's a lot of people who call this Rams a Super Bowl contending team, you need a full season of Stafford, and I don't think you're going to get it. I don't want to ever assume injury, but for me, I kind of have to assume it for Stafford just because of age, just because of the fact that you're either protecting him too much and you're depending on Kyren Williams, who is a very good running back, but you don't know what you could expect. He's always a little bit iffy, and he got injured last year too. So I don't even know if I can consider the Rams the possible full-on favorite in the NFC West. Gun to my head, I think Seattle is going to win that division. Would be a little bit of a surprise. A lot of interesting questions in LA, but I don't think they're the team that people think they're going to be this season, just because of all the questions that have kind of reserved from it, Joe.
I think winning the Stafford sweepstakes may be the worst thing that happened to him. Because, like you said, all of a sudden he came out, he's hurt. Back problems are never easy. He takes one good hit, he could be out for 6 or 8 weeks. And yeah, Garoppolo's Garoppolo, but he's never proven to be that championship caliber guy, and he would have beaten him out. They wouldn't have bothered to try to keep Stafford with all that money and a new contract and an extension, the whole bit. They would have let him go somewhere else. So I think that you're just playing with a little bit of fire with that. And um, again, I think you're right, Rabbi. They're not great all around, but he is a key piece. And if he's missing for
The key
whatever reason,
piece.
yeah, then
The key
you're
piece.
sunk. So
The thing that they have going for them is the fact that there is no team in this division that you look at and say they're the front runner coming into the season. For a last couple 3 years, it's been the Niners. The Niners look like they're going to take a step back until we see otherwise. Um, so the division is a lot more condensed than it has been in recent years. That we don't know there's no one you can look at and go, that's the favorite, because every team can make a claim to it, and every team can make a claim in the for being the worst team in that division. So that's the one thing that I think the Rams do have going for them. It's like they don't necessarily 10-7 maybe all it takes to win that division, Rabbi.
Yeah, 8-9. I think the worst team in that division could be 8-9. The best team in that division could be 10-7, which is also a blessing and a curse because they can all be good, but they can all also have the bottom dropped out based on one thing, just one thing. All right. Finally, in what we like to call an optional segment, Joe, let's find out who's going to Super Bowl LX//60, the first ever Super Bowl in Santa Clara that has to not have to deal with that stupid Roman numeral thing. Remember, Super Bowl 50 was just 50. It wasn't what it would be, which would be L. Let's predict the AFC and NFC champs. Always a hard thing to do. Always a thing that I don't want to ever see again and ever think about again after we say the last words of this segment. Jay, words you live to regret. Go first.
Yeah. I'm going to go, in reverse order. For the NFC, I'm going to take the Eagles. Yes, I know. I have a propensity to pick repeats. I mean, how many years did I pick the Chiefs to come out of the AFC? However, in this case, I just think the Eagles have less question marks than the NFC North triumvirate of Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay, who are widely considered as the other prime contenders in the NFC, though the Packers may have just answered one of their questions with the addition of Micah Parsons. Spoiler alert, more on him in a minute. Yes, the Eagles lost offensive coordinator Kellen Moore, who took the Saints head coaching job, but they returned Super Bowl MVP Jalen Hurts, 2,000-yard rusher Saquon Barkley, plus wide receivers A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, who combined for 135 catches, 1,912 yards, and 15 touchdowns to an offense that was top 10 in overall EPA per play, EPA per rush, and EPA per pass. They also returned the core of a defense that included two rookie defensive backs in Quinyon Mitchell, who might be well on his way to becoming one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, and Cooper DeJean, the Swiss Army knife, who can play anywhere and everywhere in this secondary, a la the Ravens' Kyle Hamilton. And there were big reasons that the Eagles' D finished second in EPA per play last season per True Media. Oh, and they just added three-time Pro Bowler edge rusher Zadarius Smith, who had 9 sacks in the 2024 season split between the Browns and the Lions, to an already deep pass rush led by Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt. It won't be an easy road back to the Super Bowl, as the Eagles have the 4th toughest schedule in the NFL, based on the opponent's last year's winning percentage, 561, and they play 11 games against 10 teams that made the playoffs last season, including road games against the Chiefs, Buccaneers, Vikings, Packers, Commanders, and Bills. But as I said, I think they're at the top. Still think they're head and shoulders, well, at least head above the other contenders. On the AFC side, and as much as it pains me to say it, the Baltimore Ravens, and I'm trying not to throw up in my mouth as I say that, as it may cause my Hibernia crew to revoke my membership to the Corner of Champions.
I'm texting him now.
But the NFL analyst is overriding the NFL fan here. Between the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Bills, Baltimore may have the most complete team in the AFC. They returned 10 of 11 starters from what was arguably the NFL's best offense. They were number one in EPA per play and number two in success rate, and inarguably the best rushing offense, number one in rushing yards, number three in EPA per rush, led by the best quarterback running back tandem in the NFL and two-time MVP Lamar Jackson, who threw for 4,172 yards and rushed for 915, first NFL player in NFL history to do so, and Derrick Henry, who had 1,921 yards rushing and 16 TDs on the ground. On the other side of the ball, a unit that finished in the top 10 overall in EPA per play, EPA per rush, and EPA per pass after a slow start, should be more comfortable in year two post Mike Macdonald. Is safety Malachi Starks, the Ravens' first-round pick out of Georgia, is as NFL ready as everyone thinks. He'll solidify the Ravens' secondary and allow defensive coordinator Zach Orr to use Kyle Hamilton in more of a play-everywhere Smith Army knife role, which is the best use of his talents and skill set. Schedule isn't easy. Granted, it never is when you reside in the AFC North, but the Ravens have the ninth toughest slate in the NFL. Opponents had a .533 winning percentage in 2024. They played 10 games against 9 playoff teams from 2024. But if there are two potential questions, rookie sixth-round kicker Tyler Loop, who is replacing Justin Tucker, who had one of the most reliable legs in the game for over a decade, and starting guards Andrew Voorhees and Daniel Falale become solid answers, this could be the season the Ravens' regular season juggernaut finally shows up in the postseason.
Anthony.
I'm gonna keep it try to keep it short and sweet. The NFC, yeah, I have to kind of fight back vomiting in my mouth too on this one. But I'm picking the Eagles. I just think they're the complete team, the most complete team in the NFC. I'm not sold on the Lions. I think they're going to take a step back. Just because they lost two key members of the coaching staff that was such a big part of that success. I mean, think about the job Aaron Glenn did with that defense that was basically duct taped by the end by that playoff game against Washington. I'm not sold on the Vikings either, and the Packers. Yeah, they just got. We'll talk about Micah Parsons in the next last segment, but yeah, not exactly sure what to make of the offense. If Jordan Love is going to be the guy that really takes them above that next level, obviously he's shown signs of it. But the Eagles are the most complete team in my opinion in the NFC. The AFC, I'm going with the Bills, and I just realized this is the last season they're going to be playing in that stadium in Orchard Park, and I just think back to me just growing up watching some memories of those '90s Buffalo Bills teams, how they just couldn't quite get over the hump. They gotta get over the hump at some point with this team, right? I mean, I don't know how many times Josh Allen is gonna have to run into the Chiefs when he finally figures out a way to beat them in the playoffs, but it's gonna happen sooner or later. Just playing laws of averages. If you can't do it for Orchard Park, I mean, at least do it for Kate Bishop herself. I mean, come on. You're married to Haley Steinfeld. Look. She was in one of the best movies of the year with Sinners. Josh Allen, you got a lot to live up to, pretty much in that household. So getting to the Super Bowl, at least building on your MVP season last year, that would be a step in the right direction. But you just feel like between the Bills and the Ravens, one of these teams are gonna finally break through. But and Jay, you took the Ravens. I'm going to take the Bills on this one. It's a coin flip. Which one? And that's not even a knock on the Chiefs, who, yeah, they lost last night. But do we see the Chiefs basically giving up the mantle that easily without someone having to take it away? So yeah, the Bills and the Eagles are gonna be my Super Bowl matchup. I might be, even though I think I'm clearly gonna be wrong at some point by the time we get to our Super Bowl preview. But this is the teams I'm gonna stick with for now.
Hey, Bills Ravens Sunday Night Football. That's the must-see matchup game.
Yeah, that's going to be a great opener, by the way, for Sunday night.
Yep.
Joe, go ahead. Joe, do you have anything? You don't have to.
No, I think I think we need a three-sided coin to have a coin flip between the AFC guys, because I think it's Baltimore, it's my favorite in Buffalo, it's Kansas City because they're not going to just go away. Andy Reid would never let that happen, just disappear. So I think you flip that three-sided kind of a couple of times and you come up with something. I think it is the Eagles, as hard as that is to say. So I think the AFC Championship game is actually the Super Bowl. as it has been for the last few years. And it's hopefully Buffalo because
It wasn't last year,
yeah, right.
so
Well, yeah, you know what I'm saying. It's
of
kind of
course.
the most intriguing game out of the group, and I think it just again, I root for Buffalo. You know, I picked Josh Allen last year to be the MVP. Um, I think he deserves it more than Lamar does because of the way he plays. But I think that'll be the matchup this year. Like you said, it's interesting that they put him on week one, and then never to see each other again until the playoffs. But it'll be interesting. But I think that's it. It's the three-headed monster against Philadelphia, and see where it takes us.
Let me shake things up a little bit because I think all of you are boring as hell with your picks. So let me
Uh-oh,
actually go
he's
into the right
channeling his
line.
inner Sean Roman.
Yeah, I
You
could have
guys are
picked the
boring as
Giants
hell with
and
your
Jets,
pick.
but you know.
I would no, that's a little too off of the base. This isn't as exciting, but why is everybody giving crap to the Lions? I honestly think that the Lions, even though they've lost both of their coordinators, still have the system. It's not like Dan Campbell immediately forgot how to do everything because of the fact that everyone is left. And I think a lot of people are counting the Lions out just based on the fact that they kind of just want to count the Lions out and saw what they did in the postseason last year and kind of just flailed. I like what the Eagles are doing, and they were my initial pick. But then I remembered to myself, no one's won the NFC East even in 2 years in a row since 2002. I saw what they did opening night. I like what they did. It's not changing because of that. I just think there are still some holes, especially defensively. I thought the Cowboys kind of just gash him up a little bit. And I think Jalen Hurts, who looks better than he did last year, and after the Super Bowl last year, I will never question him again. I just think there's some things that just rub me the wrong way about the Eagles. And I think as much as the Packers are good, we don't know what Micah Parsons is going to be week one. And we don't necessarily know if Micah Parsons, one defensive player does not change the whole entire defense. It helps, but it doesn't change the whole entire defense. So I'm going to go with a team that's going to be battle tested in their own division and a team that I think will be ready for the postseason this year. And I'm picking the Lions in the NFC
All
to
right.
finally make the big dance. In the AFC, it is a three-sided coin. However, my coin has landed on its side this year, and it's landed up. It landed up. Here's why. As much as I love the Chiefs, I think that there's still not a lot of offensive talent, and I think there's still so many questions with that offensive line. If you saw them last night, you saw there wasn't really a lot of running on that team. And a lot of the plays last night had to be made by Patrick Mahomes, and I don't think number 15 is going to have a whole season where he's going to rush for 600 yards. That's just not going to happen anymore.
That won't happen.
So I think the Chiefs are going to be a little bruised up by that division, and I would expect them to make a run. I love the Bills and the Ravens very much, but honestly, you can say, oh, they have to make that leap sometime. Why? Because when they both have kind of a history of not showing up in the big moments, why do I expect them to jump into that big moment now? So I went with the team that's made the Super Bowl within the last 5 years, has been able to actually slay the dragon at least for 1 year. And if they can just get some semblance of defense, they'll be really good. I'm going with Cincinnati to win the AFC this year because I honestly think that the numbers that Jamar Chase and the team put up last year were almost otherworldly, and that's with the bad start to the season. They have to obviously get into a better start this season. Joe Burrow's only won one game in the first 2 games of his career every single year. That he's not a good starter. They need to start good. They need to do really well. They always do well in division, regardless of who they play. Some of their games against Baltimore have been classics. Some of their games against Pittsburgh have been classics. Some of their games against Cleveland have been snorefest, but we won't get into that. So honestly, I'm going to go a little off a limb this year and say we have a Cincinnati-Detroit Super Bowl for Super Bowl 60 in San Francisco. It's a little off there, but I honestly think that those two teams are going to surprise.
The football analyst in me, Rabbi, will give you props for Cincinnati because they're a very interesting story. And the only reason I didn't take them as my team to exceed expectations because I did it last year. The football fan in me wants to kind of wants to lean towards you taking those LSU boys again. You know, I don't know.
It has nothing to do with the LSU boys. It just really has to do with the fact that
I'm teasing you, partner.
I know, I understand. I understand. The team that's talented on offense, though, because we saw some offenses struggle. I don't think these two teams will ever struggle on offense, and I think that's going to help them a lot. All right.
As far as the Lions go, as much as you want to talk about, everybody, the big story is, they lost their coordinators. They're getting back a defensive player of the year candidate in Aiden Hutchinson. Don't count. That defense is going to be good, especially with him back.
And that defense is going to be one that's going to be better, I think, than it was at least the final 7 to 8 weeks of the season. So we'll see what happens. They don't have to patchwork that team anymore. All right. Finally tonight, unless you've been living under a rock, and I hate to say it, but I think a lot of people want Jerry Jones to live in a bunker for the rest of his natural life and take Steven with him. Last Thursday, we saw a trade of massive proportions. Instead of giving star pass rusher Micah Parsons the money that a lot of people believed he deserved, just a little over 18 months after declaring he wanted to be a Cowboy for life, the standoff between the Cowboys and Parsons ended with the Cowboys trading the 26-year-old star to the Packers, who, mind you, ended the Cowboys season 2 years ago, and in return came back with 2 first-rounders in the next 2 years, and also defensive tackle Kenny Clark in return. Anthony, I'll start with you. I want to get your opinion on what's rare, a hold-in, which usually ends in a kumbaya, but instead it's a sayonara between Micah and America's team.
I was wondering if Jerry Jones watched his own Netflix documentary in the last couple of weeks. And
he did. And then he said, what is that guy who actually did everything?
And just thought to himself, how can I possibly top some of the clusterfucks we learned in that 8-part series about the Dallas Cowboys? This is a qualifier. It kills me because he literally says in that documentary, he likes that the Cowboys are kind of the center of the 365-day drama that's part of the National Football League. Mm-hmm. I don't think the fans will agree with that whatsoever. This is a man who bought the team and immediately fired a legend, Tom Landry. So, yes, Jerry Jones is a gambler from the word go. He's also someone who probably is starved for credit because he bought out the Herschel Walker trade. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, Jimmy Johnson knew what he was doing because he didn't want the players. He wanted the draft picks, which he immediately cut the players he got in that trade to get the players, which led to guys like Emmitt Smith and Darren Wilson and some of these other players that contribute to those Super Bowl teams in the 90s. I don't know what the hell Jerry Jones is thinking right now. Look, I think even Michael Irvin almost had a heart attack from the moment he was on the air and claiming this is going to eventually get worked out to being live on, then being on social media with his own live reaction like, I can't believe this. Neither can anyone else, because I almost dropped my phone on in the middle of traffic on West 44th Street when I found out that he was not just handing Micah Parsons on to another team, he's trading him to a team he's going to play at the end of this month in the Green Bay Packers.
Literally a month on Sunday Night Football on national TV, literally 31 days to the day he trades him.
Yeah, the biggest winners of this is NBC executives. You don't think they were doing cartwheels when they found out this trade was happening? But it's the fact that Jerry Jones and Jay, I'm gonna set you with this. His ego.
Joe's going up next, by the way. So
I appreciate the setup nonetheless, Ann.
Yeah, but his ego definitely is the reason this trade happened. This whole holdout issue, everything from publicly criticizing Parsons' agent to trying to make a deal with Parsons without his agent being allegedly involved. This whole thing was a Jerry Jones spectacle from start to finish. And it just, again, Jerry Jones, the GM, is probably the best thing that happened to everyone else in the NFC East. Because when you think about the Cowboys and how close they've been to being real contenders, it just seems like Jerry Jones, the GM, has sabotaged Jerry Jones, the owner, far too often over the last couple of decades. And this was just another issue of Jerry Jones, the GM, being being the clusterfuck that hosts the Cowboys. And we saw Thursday night, if this was a trade he thought was help the Cowboys stop the run. Yeah. I don't know what game film is he looking at, because Jalen Hurts pretty much did what he wanted when he got outside the pocket in a stadium with 70,000 people knows Jalen Hurts is going to run out of the pocket the moment his reads are not there. And he outran Saquon Barkley, who is literally the best running back in the league right now. We'll just tell you, I don't know what Jerry Jones is thinking right now, but yes, Jerry Jones, the owner, is not going to fire Jerry Jones, the GM, because they're one and the same. But yeah, if you're a Packers fan, you're looking at this, and then you find out he may not play tomorrow because of a back issue. I'm not giving that. I'm not giving no credit to Jerry Jones if he knew something that we didn't know. I'm agreeing with you on that one. But yes, this trade was Jerry Jones' ego and pride, and just willingness to create a soap opera that his team don't need. That facilitated this trade. And yes, Michael Parsons got a raw deal in this whole thing, but he's getting the right. He's going to get a good opportunity, and I'm looking forward to that moment on Sunday night when he actually has a clean shot at that press that Prescott, and just what happens if he hits him just hard enough to how Prescott's teammates is going to react. That's going to be the Sports Center highlight of the night. The moment that confrontation eventually happens, and which it will.
Yeah,
And
Anthony,
Joe,
with you on the ego and the drama, and I'm going to get into that once Joe has his say.
Oh, thanks. I think it actually bodes well for Schottenheimer with the team because with all the stuff that was going on the sideline and with practice and Micah being there but not being dressed and laying around, sitting in a chair, laying on a table, I think it was Schottenheimer that finally went to Jerry Jones and said, "You need to do something because this isn't going to work. I can't have a guy who's going to decide every week if he's going to play, if he's going to practice." Because it's going to split the locker room, right? You're going to have guys that say, "Hey, he deserves to get whatever he wants." There's going to be other guys that go, "He's getting paid. He's making 10 times more than me, and he wants a new contract." So, I think it always is troubling in the locker room when stuff like that happens. And yeah, Jerry caused it from the beginning, and it's always going to be that way because he wants to be the center of attention. But I think I give props to Schottenheimer because it had to be, the day after that video came out, and obviously we saw it. Can you imagine in Dallas how often they played that every hour and talked about it on every talk show that here's Micah laying it on a table, and whether it happened for two, and Schottenheimer even said, he goes, "I don't know, I'm going to have to watch the tape. Like I'm not concentrating on what my players are doing. I'm watching the game," which is what he was hoping everybody else was doing. But I think when that happened, he had to go to Jerry and say, "Hey, boss, you got to do something because you either got to sign him today or you got to get rid of him or you got to have another conversation with his agent or something because this is not going to work." And, they said the Eagles made a nice run at him and, Green Bay is very astute at these things. I think in the long run, again, forgetting about Sunday night in 3 weeks, who cares? I think the biggest thing that comes out of this is both teams get better. They were able to sign Russell Bland to a nice extension because now they had some extra money.
Ron Bland, yeah.
Right there where he took a guy who's been really good, who's loyal, and rewarded him to show that I'm not some cheapskate, that I'm not going to pay anybody. So he gives him an extension, gets a couple of draft picks, gets some really good draft picks potentially, and then you take it from there and you see where it goes. It's not Herschel Walker because they didn't get that many top guys, and they weren't that bad. They're not that bad that they're going to get the first and second pick in the draft. Green Bay's picks aren't going to be 1 and 2. They may be 17 and 18 or 20 and 21 for all we know, or 30 and 31 for all we know. So it'll depend on what happens there. But I think both teams in the next 5 years benefit from the trade. It does give Green Bay a leg up in getting a defense, which they've been looking for a few years. And so I think that's the outcome of the whole thing is they both get better.
Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I'm gonna start by kind of like piggybacking on Joe's point about the trade itself. From a strictly football trade perspective, getting a pair of first rounders as well as a solid run stuffing defensive tackle who can play on the nose or as a 3 technique and 3-time Pro Bowler Kenny Clark, something the Cowboys were in dire need of as their run defense allowed the most rushing touchdowns and the 4th most rushing yards in the NFL last season for Micah Parsons, isn't a bad return, especially since the Cowboys have enough depth at the edge rusher position to potentially recreate Parsons' production in the aggregate. Dante Fowler had 10.5 sacks last season in Washington. They drafted defensive end Donovan Iziriku from Boston College in the second round. He terrorized the ACC last season. 16.5 sacks, 21 tackles for losses in 12 games. The trade also gives Dallas the financial flexibility, as Joe talked about, to address other needs in the offseason, Bland being, the one right there. And those two first rounders, even if they wind up being closer to the bottom of the first round than the top, as Green Bay is expected to be a playoff team, it gives the Cowboys premium draft capital to make trades for players and or picks, or simply better their own draft position. But, to go back to Anthony's point, since this is the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones, it's never this simple. Regardless of whether Jones thought he had a handshake agreement on a deal with Parsons after a conversation with him back in March that did not include Parsons' agent, David Mulugheta, the optics are really bad, especially with the contentious negotiations Jones went through last year with wide receiver CeeDee Lamb and quarterback Dak Prescott, who, when Jones tried to negotiate directly with him, quickly shut the owner down and told Jones to talk to his agent, according to sources familiar with the negotiations. Jones and the Cowboys should have done a better job of getting out in front of the Parsons discussions. Instead, it seemed like, as Anthony said, Jones deliberately chose the path that led to the most drama, saying on Michael Irvin's podcast in the middle of August that when they sent over the details of the contract, Jones believed they had agreed upon that Mulugheta wasn't involved in. Quote, the agent told us to stick it up our ass, which of course made things so much worse than they needed to be. Mulugheta's version of that conversation is told to ESPN's First Take earlier this week is that he told the Cowboys, quote, what I did tell them was if they believed that the contract was already finalized and they were sending it over to me to be rubber stamped, then they probably shouldn't send it over. As Michael Silver of The Athletic said in his piece back on August 29th, quote, Jones' habit of trying to engage in negotiations directly with Cowboys players is patronizing and impudent. Players hire agents for a reason in conjunction with a procedure established by the NFLPA, which represents their collective interest, and that process should be respected. Jones, as owner and employer, understands his power in this dynamic and is attempting to harness it accordingly. He should play by the rules and recognize his players' right to hire someone to handle their business. And so I have this straight. He's so upset that Parsons won't put pen to paper without Mulugheta's involvement that he won't even return the agent's calls. Come on, man, get over it. And look, Parsons, and here's the thing, and doing a deeper dive into this, because I have a brother who's a diehard Cowboys fan, and he follows all of the people who cover the team. I got some insight here that I didn't expect. Parsons isn't completely innocent party in all of this. It's not, that he took the high road and acted the better person during all of this drama. His behavior while all of this was playing out might have no small part in Dallas electing to trade him. According to those who cover the Cowboys, Parsons was someone who never had great body language, even when things were going well. But it was really bad during training camp practice and seemed to get worse by the day, culminating, as Joe alluded to, in that image of him lying on the trainer's table behind the team bench for several minutes with his eyes closed during the third quarter of the Cowboys' final preseason game. According to a story by Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer, Parsons is seen by teammates as egotistical and self-centered, putting himself above the team, both on the field with the way he freelanced, which often left his teammates executing what was called, where Parsons did his own thing trying to make big plays, and off the field with the content of his The Edge with Micah Parsons podcast, which created issues that went all the way up to Prescott. Add to that a story that I while I was researching, I uncovered by the Fort Worth Star-Telegram from last week that indicated that Parsons' relationship with his teammates had become as fractured as his relationship with the front office. There was a run-in with DeMarcus Lawrence that blew up after the season last year, and then there was Jerry Jones saying that it was, quote, unanimous decision to move on from Parsons. And Jones expanded on that statement saying, quote, the entire coaching representatives, as well as our entire front office, everyone that is involved that has an interest in going forward that we counsel with, this was unanimous. Players that were on the team leadership council certainly had a say. The article goes on to say that a team source with knowledge of the discussions this week confirmed Jones's statement by saying coaches, including head coach Brian Schottenheimer, and at least one front-facing player were consulted before the decision to trade Parsons was made. The prevailing theory is that front-facing player was Prescott. At the end of the day, how each side viewed the aforementioned meeting between Parsons and Jones back in March is the key issue that led to the Cowboys and Parsons parting ways. Jones viewed it as a contract negotiation. Parsons and his people, especially his agent, David Mulligetta, who was not involved, did not. As Mulligetta said, quote, to expect somebody like Micah Parsons to be one of the best defenders in the NFL and also be a great lawyer when it comes to contract, I think is a bit unfair. His job is to go out there and chase quarterbacks, and our job is to go out there and chase commas for him. I think Jeff Howe, the NFL national insider for The Athletic, summed this whole mess up best in his piece, writing, quote, strictly in terms of compensation, the Cowboys did fine. It's seldom a case for a team to recoup real value when a player is so publicly available, and the Cowboys accomplished that. But it's perfectly reasonable to argue it never should have reached this point.
Agreed. And I think you guys have stated it all about this situation. A weird situation, and one that all parties should think about what they've done. But Parsons got his contract and he is ready to go. Well, we'll see if it happens, but 4 years now, the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. All right, that does it for Jay Kaplan, Anthony Strait, and my partner every Monday on the Official Review Podcast. That is the Official Review Podcast on Facebook and TikTok. Joe Tufaro. I'm Steven Rabinowitz. Anthony Strait, by the way, and me are the big fans of the Los Angeles Chargers super fan who got free tickets to the Super Bowl last night thanks to YouTube. Nice. We respect that woman very much, and one of 1,000 Chargers fans out there that at least we know of. I don't think there's too many more. All right. Sorry, Travis and Taylor, but the only engagement that we wish is with you, the people, on social media. YouTube.com/On the Sports Lines on demand. Facebook.com/On the Sports Lines live. And here's some more engagement, Jay.
Yeah, our Twitter handle is @On the Sports Lines, where you'll find a link to each new show like today's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. As another NFL season begins, our eyes, both as fans and analysts, along with everyone else's who cover and follow the NFL, will be on the quarterbacks, and we've already started that with today's show. From the stars like Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson, to rookies thrown straight into the fire like Cam Ward, to veterans looking to resurrect their careers in new surroundings like Daniel Jones and all the others in between, which makes it a perfect time for you to click the link on the On the Sports Lines Twitter page to the great piece by Zach Kiefer, senior NFL writer for The Athletic. The title pretty much says it all. The Bust Files, how NFL teams break young quarterbacks. But Kiefer does a really good deep dive into the topic, and the comments by Minnesota Vikings head coach and certified quarterback whisperer Kevin O'Connell alone make this a must-read, though plenty of others with Hall of Fame resumes chime in. Check it out.
All right, see you all next time as we'll throw a little baseball pennant race into this smorgasbord of football as we do. And I did not spell that correctly, but I still know how to say it. Doesn't matter. All right. Enjoy the weekend. We'll see you next time on the Sports Lines. Good night.
Have a good weekend, everybody.